This is TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents. I'm your host, Derryn Wong. Every week, my colleagues and I break down a business story that matters. Now, this time around, I have a real thriller for you guys, a seat of your pants tale. That's a tale of horror and woe, even more lurid than the US election. So we're talking about two of the most exciting things in transport together, emissions and commercial vehicles. Now, I heard that silence, yes, but stay with me because really, this is a uniquely Singaporean tale with the best of intentions at the start, but big gaps that you could drive a truck through and some minor skullduggery from vehicle dealers. Now, on the face of it, Singapore's electrification of its road vehicles has been a real high-voltage success. As at September 2024, more than a third of new car registrations are fully electric. And for light goods vehicles like vans, the figure is even better. It's an impressive 44%. Now, nobody's perfect, and it turns out there are also gaps in Singapore's EV policies, which I said you can drive a truck through, and we're going to tell you all about it. But jokes aside, this is something that has changed the whole trajectory of the commercial vehicle market for the past few years, and not necessarily for the better. And to help explain it, I've got Edward Tan, the Executive Director of the Hong Seh Group, here to talk us through it. Hey, Ed, how you doing?
Hey, very good. Thank you for having me at this podcast.
Okay, cool. You know, Hong Seh is probably going to be a familiar name to our listeners. You guys might remember that Hong Seh used to be the dealer for Ferrari and Maserati some years back. But, you know, you guys have done a huge 360 since those days. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I think it's a remarkable change. We used to do Ferrari Maserati, which is small volume cars with extreme performance and it's an exclusive mark. Now we're doing electric commercial vehicles. It's a very big difference. It's a different mindset. But we believe that this is for the future. We started off this journey probably about 6 years ago.
So that's before all the pro-EV emissions regulations came in, huh?
It was at the transition where we just started to have the benefits of CVES coming out. We started just before it. In the past, we were also dabbling with bringing Tesla cars.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
We started from there.
You know, through disclosure, you obviously has an interest to see more EVs on the roads. You guys sell EVs. And I think actually your company has the largest number of Chinese brands under one distributor, if I'm not wrong, which is quite interesting. But the good thing is we all agree that that is a good thing. You know, EVs are a good thing. So how significant are commercial vehicles when it comes to Singapore's carbon emissions?
It is very significant. Back in the past, I think Mr. Iswaran, then the transport minister, said that the larger vehicles have a very much greater impact. Heavy vehicles comprise of less than a tenth of our population.
Vehicle population.
Vehicle
right?
population,
Yeah, okay.
but it accounts for nearly 50% of the carbon emissions in Singapore.
I guess he means from vehicles. Wow. But still, that's a lot. That's crazy a lot.
That is a very significant amount of carbon from a small population of vehicles. And this is commercial. This is heavy commercial. We should do something about it.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, just now I pointed out the electrification race is actually going pretty good for Singapore. So to give our listeners some background, to control emissions level, Singapore government sets limits on exhaust levels and fuel quality for all kinds of vehicles here, you know, low sulfur, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, the interesting thing we're pointing out today is what you mentioned just now, CVES, Commercial Vehicle Emissions Scheme, that was introduced in 2021. So what kind of effect did that have on the market when it first came out? You know, it was pretty good for you, right? You guys were selling BYD vans.
Yeah, we were selling BYD vans, DFSK vans. Everyone's making full use of that. What the government did was, for electrified vehicles, like for example, these vans, the government would give a 30,000 discount because they were electric,
Wow.
They were energy efficient, they don't pollute the environment.
Well, not directly at the tailpipe.
Not at the tailpipe.
There is no tailpipe, right?
Government in Singapore categorizes it into three categories, A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
So in the A segment, it's basically for electric vehicles, very low pollutants.
Yeah.
They used to give us a 30,000 discount on the purchase of vehicles.
That's a lot, right?
After a while, they changed that to 15.
Now it's 15.
Now it's currently 15, and as of 31st of March next year, We're just waiting for the government to tell us if that's still going to stay or they're going to change something or what. So if you want to buy an electric vehicle, please buy it quickly before that changes again.
That's the car dealer talking there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's in my interest to get more people to buy electric commercial vehicles or electric vehicles.
He has a point, you know. You don't feel rushed, but he does have a point. So B, what are the vehicles in the B range?
Well, usually in the hybrid category or less polluting, benefits $5,000 for a discount from your taxes and such.
The last one, C is?
The C is the polluting fellas, which are usually the ICE, where you be
diesels,
petrol
right?
or diesel, whichever it is, the polluting fellas. So you have a benefit, which is a discount on going green, and you have a penalty if you're burning up the environment.
Right. And that's a huge amount if you're buying a fleet vehicle, right?
For fleet vehicles, it's important. But because we know that electric vehicles, they're more expensive than a regular IC. IC has been around for a long time. It's cheap. So the government's been very nice and helpful for the light goods vehicles like the LGV to encourage people to purchase it.
Which brings us to the 44% of them now being electric now.
For the light van segment, yes.
So that's the good part of it. So now we're gonna talk about how that has kind of also worked against the industry.
Oh, yeah.
Because the heavy vehicles don't get any rebates, right?
Correct. Because what you have is you've got three types of vehicles. You've got light goods vehicle, you've got heavy goods vehicle, and you've got very, very, very heavy goods vehicle like prime movers and the rest.
Yeah.
So on the light goods segment, the government's done very well. In heavy and very heavy, there is no discount, there's no penalty, there's nothing.
The plot thickens, right?
So because of that, just bump yourself up to the next category in the weight carrying capability and total tonnage, and bingo, you don't have to pay any
it's a huge
penalty.
Loophole, right? I mean, as a business owner, if I was a business, I buy like three or four lorries, and that's like, how much do I save? 15,000 per lorry.
15,000 because you do not have to pay the penalty.
Right. So that's a loophole. Wow. So the problem is the regulation that was supposed to drive down emissions is also kind of pushing them up at the same time. So it turns out the government can make mistakes here. Now we're going to a halfway point right now in the podcast, but when we come back, we find out why this is all legit and how it's still continuing right to this day.
If you've been a fan of the podcast Mark to Market, Wealth BT and Property BT, they are moving to a new listing, BT Correspondence. Look for episodes every Tuesday from October. All the insights and analysis and market trends, property, wealth, and soon mobility too. Powered by the Business Times journalism of Genevieve Kwa, Leslie Yee, Ben Paul, and Derryn Wong. Because great reads should be heard. The BT Correspondence channel. Find BT Correspondence wherever you listen to podcasts.
And now, back to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondence.
All right, we're back from our dreams of clean air, and we're still talking to Edward Tan, Executive Director of mostly electric commercial vehicle distributor Hong Seh. Okay, we were talking about the loopholes surrounding the heavier vehicles, right? So it's all totally legal, and how exactly does it work?
No, it's 100% legal. It's just a matter of categorization. Some vehicles have the capability to be re-licensed past the light goods weight limit. Light goods weight limit is 3.5 tons. If they can have those vehicles registered above that at 3.7 tons or 3.8 tons, as long as it's past 3.5, you're in the heavy goods category.
So it's not actually the vehicle weighing 3.5 tons. It's total weight and carrying capacity is...
Yes, the maximum weight on the road of that vehicle plus its goods, the maximum amount that it can be legally weighed in at. So if you have that and it's above 3.5, you're in a whole new escape hatch.
Right. And then you get like $15,000 discount, so to speak.
You avoid the penalties of the 15, so that's a very good thing. So that's why you can see that quite a lot of the lorry market have started switching from light goods vehicle to heavy goods vehicle.
And I can understand why. I mean, if I was a car dealer and I could offer my clients a cheaper vehicle with the same capability, why wouldn't I, right? Okay, so Ed, the loophole, it sounds like a small thing, but it's actually had quite a big impact, right? And in my own research, I see that since 2021, which is when CVES came out, actually the light goods and van population has actually fallen by about 2%. And that actually reversed the trend. It was rising from 2013 to 2021. And we suddenly see that it's falling the other way. And the opposite thing is totally true for heavy vehicles. And that's going up since 2021. So that's one example of how the loophole has changed the buying dynamics, right?
Yes, definitely. A lot of people have changed in that segment. So instead of having electric G, they wind up with a diesel lorry, which can do the same work.
Right.
Part of it, I would believe, is also because of human nature, because humans don't like change, and that's still diesel. They go to a pump.
Yeah.
So one of the other reasons why I think we all need to push this is also change of mentality and mindset.
But, also, I think your figures showed that overall, the actual number of electric commercial vehicles dropped, right?
Yes. What happened was, if you look at the year before, you've got something like 23% of total commercial vehicles being electric. But then this year, with 8 months, I think up to September or so, I think the figure dropped down to 18%.
Right.
And that was because there were other ways for people to register the vehicles that they needed in a different category without penalty.
Right. So the take-up in the light sector was very high, 44%, but overall it's actually gone down.
Yes. The light segment, where especially in vans, I think it's an electrified system. I'm very happy to see that grow. The other part would be lorries. It didn't grow that big because there were very few alternatives.
I wrote a story about this topic earlier this month. So I asked the NEA, National Environment Agency, what the reason was for heavier vehicles not having the incentives or the penalties. And they said the heavier vehicles are not covered by CVES, as cleaner and market-ready alternatives are still limited, unlike cleaner light vehicles, which are more widely available and market-ready. So basically, they're saying that there are only mostly diesels for heavy vehicles, but the same is not true for light vehicles. In your experience, that is not true, right?
Well, that mentality and that idea probably would be a lot earlier in this electrification stage.
How many years?
Probably about a year or two ago.
See, that's what I mean. That's how fast the electrification race is proceeding, right? It's
correct.
Crazy.
And also how many people are invested into bringing these. We as a company right now, on the heavier vehicles, we've got trucks, we've got freezers, we've got 14-footers, we've got 20-footers. We are even outfitting these 14 and 20-footers with refrigerated systems. I can tow your cold foods, your medicine, your whatever you need. Cold chain logistics, full. And in the future, which is probably within 6 months, you'll see a lot more of even the very heavy stuff.
I mean, earlier this week, I was at SITCE, the transport conference, and
yes.
I saw, BYD has a newer version of their electric garbage truck.
Yes.
And these are really big vehicles, and they work.
Those vehicles are here. Even that, you take it one step further. Buses.
Yeah.
The large buses, the coaches and all that are also changing. You've got the Singapore government changing 17,000 diesel buses into either hybrid or electric. These are also part of the commercial fleet systems which are out there that we need to change to have a better, cleaner environment.
But the problem is, I think, so it's really, it sounds like you're just waiting for the rules to change, but it's chicken and egg, right? To get back to what the NEA said, if you don't have incentives, that won't push the market to bring in alternatives, right?
Correct.
Yeah. We saw that in vans and we saw that in cars.
Well, we saw that most importantly in cars, because if you look at your car segment, you've got 30+% of its population all converted to electric. But if you look at commercial, it's actually dipped.
Yeah.
Because of incentives or non-incentives of the category of light goods versus heavier goods.
Okay. So it's
actually been a damper rather than a help. So we just hope that some things change and help out a little bit. We need to bring that incentives to the heavy and the buses and the very, very heavy vehicles, because that is the most polluting part of our industry.
But okay, so I'm going to be the devil's advocate once again. You mentioned about the really heavy stuff also becoming electrified, but I think studies have shown that the heavier you go at current battery technology, there's a kind of diminishing returns, right?
Yes.
If it's too heavy and it's too big, you just don't have the range. And so the NEA is not totally wrong, right? Because the really heavy stuff isn't quite there yet. Or what do you think, actually?
I think NEA was correct when they first created the policies.
Yep.
But technology has moved a lot faster and quicker. We need to adapt in what is available. For example, In the past, lorries were only 200 kilometers range on one charge. We built it different and we're able to get 300 kilometers. In the heavy goods vehicle, we are able to get about 200 kilometers range out of a 14-footer. But then if you ask me, the question is, how do I extend it more, especially if I put a fridge on it? Because it takes energy, which means my range will go down. That's why we're also developing an energy storage solution to enable the refrigerators to run its own, for example, handphone battery pack stuck on it.
Wow. Okay.
So it doesn't exist. I need to go and develop this so that we can help the whole market. So technology is changing, it's developing, it's growing. So we are human. We should learn, we should adapt. Policies should also learn and adapt. And
maybe the biggest takeaway is the fact that as EV tech goes on, and it's not new tech, it's been around for more than 10 years in Singapore already, that it's getting faster as it goes along, right? And when the Chinese came in, it just really took off.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tech coming out. All the requirements that we used to complain that we want to have, like range, volumetric size capabilities, it's there. All we need to move this segment of commercial vehicles to a cleaner, greener version for all the people in Singapore is, government, please have a look at your Y and your X legislation.
I think that's just a start.
Help us a bit.
Okay, thanks, Ed. It sounds like, the future of commercial vehicles is actually quite bright, but we got to make baby steps to get there eventually. I'm actually quite optimistic about it. Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you very much, Derryn and BT, for having me.
And that's it for Transport BT this time round. Next week, BT correspondents will be back with another episode on property. So please become a pod person again and check it out. If you have any thoughts or questions about the show, please drop us an email at btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. That's btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. I'm Derryn Wong. Thank you for listening.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.